Now to Queensland COVID tyrant Annastacia Palaszczuk, who made this infamous declaration in the peak of the pandemic.
People living in New South Wales, they have New South Wales hospitals. In Queensland, we have Queensland hospitals for our people.
Well, it's hard to forget those words, and it's also hard to forget the time that Palaszczuk turned away sick babies and forced them to fly to Sydney, a policy which may have contributed to the death of one of those children, an unborn child, all to satisfy her unscientific paranoia and bolster her election hopes. Now, she has been forced out of the top job with speculation that she was pushed by unelected union figures. Now, I have no sympathy for Comrade Palaszczuk, who was the last remaining COVID premier standing and became an authoritarian crackpot during the pandemic. But isn't it creepy that an entire state can lose a premier because a union hack says so? Reporter Jonathon Lea from Sky challenged Queensland's new premier, Stephen Miles, on these points, and it was fun to watch.
Do you understand the frustration, Deputy Premier, of Queenslanders after union leaders essentially removed the Premier and installed you? Peter Dutton said yesterday that you're utterly beholden to the unions. Are you beholden to the unions? Should Queenslanders be wary?
Did you ask Annastacia Palaszczuk to go? Did you betray the Premier?
Is it not strange that perhaps while you were telling the state that you were focused on the natural disaster, you're actually working behind the scene to feather your own nest?
Well, Miles is proud of his union masters, and why wouldn't he be? They gifted this rookie premier the top job on a platter. He has 1 year to prove himself before Queenslanders actually get a say. Kel, I loved that press conference with Jonathon Lea, just sitting back casually, peppering this brand new premier who hasn't really been in the spotlight to that degree before. But the admission that he's proud of the fact that unions can say who goes there and who runs the state. That, to me, was an absurd admission to make.
It was, and it just shows how when you get a really good journalist asking good questions like Jonathon Lea, they don't know what to do. It's like his cross-examination of Bill Shorten, when Shorten wouldn't say what his policy was going to cost. It cost Shorten an election. Now, this bloke was the same. They expect the press gallery to be, basically left-wing and basically on side, and will only ask nice questions. But what we actually know, what we've seen, is the way the faceless men... Let me tell you where the faceless men expression came from. Late 1960s, about 1967, there was a famous photograph of Gough Whitlam and his deputy Lance Barnard on the street in Canberra at night, waiting outside a building while the ALP executive, of which they were not members, that consisted mainly of unionists, were deciding on policy matters. Now, that photograph was extremely damaging for the Labor Party, but we're still there. We're still there. We're still with these faceless men locked in smoke-filled rooms, although maybe these days they don't smoke as much, I don't know, deciding what's going to happen. This is fundamentally undermining democracy, isn't it?
It's also just Sophie, the way that he's just confidently at a press conference, proud that, well, of course the unions would pick the new leader of the party. I mean, that to me is absurd. And to Kel's point, a great reporter like Jonathon Lea being able to extract that uncomfortable moment, it's great television, isn't it?
Well, Jack, I will say that Jonathon Lea is one of the best journalists in a press pack. When he's put before, questions these politicians, he's very articulate in his questioning, and he really grills them. And this is what the Queensland media need to keep on top of, because they're a year out from an election, and Stephen Miles has an almighty challenge. Now, let's not diminish the fact that Annastacia Palaszczuk is in a third term here. She's incredibly successful, whether you like her politics or not. So the media really have to keep holding him to account now, and that he's already receiving quite a bit of criticism that he does not perform well in front of a press pack. And I think there will be some brushing up on his skills, because he doesn't seem to command those press conferences like Palaszczuk, like Dan Andrews did. So he's got a tough year ahead, and I think it's going to be an almighty task for him to win the next election.